In 1973, while every other manufacturer was surrendering to emissions regulations, Pontiac engineers secretly built an engine that wasn't supposed to exist. The Super Duty 455 was their rebellion against the death of horsepower. But Mopar's 446 pack had already been terrorizing streets for 3 years, and its owners weren't about to bow down to anyone. You know the muscle car era died in the early 70s. What you don't know is that these two cars staged the final battle before the lights went out. One was built when horsepower was already illegal. The other was the last of Mopar's triple carburetor monsters. When they met on empty highways in 1973 and 74, they weren't just racing, they were fighting for the soul of American performance. The Super Duty 455 Trans Am shouldn't have existed. By 1973, compression ratios were dropping faster than quarter-mile times. Insurance companies had essentially banned performance cars. GM had officially ended all racing programs. But deep inside Pontiac's engineering department, a small group of rebels was hand-assembling something extraordinary. They called it RPOL 75. But everyone else would know it as the Super Duty 455, the last real performance engine General Motors would build for decades. Only 252 Trans Ams got this engine in 1973, another 943 in 1974, before Pontiac killed it forever. The engineers who built it knew they were creating the last of their kind. They used forged aluminum pistons, shot-peened connecting rods, a special nodular iron crankshaft, and cylinder heads that flowed better than anything Pontiac had produced since the Ram Air 5 prototype. The camshaft was so aggressive that the engine loped at idle like a full race motor. But here's what Pontiac didn't tell anyone. They rated this monster at just 290 net horsepower in 1973, when a base Corvette was rated at 190. Insurance companies bought the lie, but anyone who drove one knew the truth. Pontiac was sandbagging harder than they ever had before. Magazine tests told the real story. Car and Driver ran a bone-stock SD 455 formula through the quarter in 13.54 seconds. At 104 miles per hour, Motor Trend recorded a 13.34 at 103. These were numbers that matched or beat the legendary LS6 Chevelle from just 3 years earlier, except now it was supposedly the dark ages of performance. Dealers couldn't believe what they were selling. Customers couldn't believe what they were driving. The 446 pack had been Mopar's street weapon since 1970, and by the time the Super Duty arrived, it had already earned its reputation as one of the most feared engines on the street. The name itself told you everything. 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors sitting on an Edelbrock aluminum intake manifold, feeding a 440 cubic inch monster that Chrysler built specifically for street domination. The six-pack wasn't Mopar's most powerful engine. That crown belonged to the Hemi, but the 446 pack had something the Hemi didn't: drivability. It would idle smoothly enough to cruise Main Street, run on pump gas without complaining, and still destroy almost anything that pulled up next to it. The triple carbs opened progressively. The center unit handled normal driving, but floor it and those outboard carburetors opened up like floodgates, dumping fuel with an intake roar that sounded like feeding time at the zoo. Plymouth rated it at 390 gross horsepower in 1970, dropping it slightly to 385 for 1971. But like every manufacturer in the muscle car era, those numbers were pure fiction designed to keep insurance companies happy. Drag strip testing revealed the truth. A well-tuned 446 Pack Cuda could run the quarter mile in the high 13s straight from the factory. Some magazines recorded times as quick as 13.7 at 104 miles per hour with good traction and optimal conditions. The Cuda that carried this engine was purpose-built for war. The E-body platform was Chrysler's dedicated performance chassis, with a suspension designed for launching hard and a body that looked like violence incarnate. The shaker hood scoop that fed the six-pack wasn't just functional, it was psychological warfare. When that scoop started dancing above the hood at a stoplight, everyone knew what was coming. But here's where this story gets interesting. The Super Duty 455 and the 446 pack represented two completely different engineering philosophies, built in two completely different eras of automotive history. The Mopar was created at the height of the muscle car wars, when manufacturers could build whatever they wanted. The Pontiac was born in the darkness of 1973, when 5-mile-per-hour bumpers and catalytic converters were destroying everything enthusiasts loved. The Super Duty's advantage was its modernity. Despite being built in the emissions era, Pontiac engineers used every trick they'd learned from decades of performance development. The SD455's heads flowed 325 cubic feet per minute on the intake side, better than most race-prepared engines. The valve train was designed to spin to 6,000 RPM reliably, unheard of for a 455 cubic inch engine. The Rochester Quadrajet was specially calibrated with richer jets and a more aggressive secondary opening rate. The 446 pack fought back with brute displacement and those 3 carburetors that gave it a split personality. Under normal driving, it consumed fuel through just the center carburetor's 350 CFM, but when provoked, all 3 carbs opened for a combined 1,350 cubic feet per minute of fuel flow, more than most race engines could swallow. The intake manifold was a work of art, with perfectly sized runners that kept air velocity high while flowing massive volumes. Weight became a critical factor. A loaded 1973 Trans Am SD 455 weighed about 3,850 pounds with those federally mandated 5-mile-per-hour bumpers, adding unnecessary mass. The 1971 Cuda 6 Pack came in around 3,700 pounds, giving it a 150-pound advantage. In drag racing, every 100 pounds cost you a tenth of a second, so this difference mattered. But the Pontiac had one secret weapon: its transmission. The SD455 came with either a specially calibrated Turbo 400 automatic or a Muncie M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed manual. Both were built to handle the engine's massive 510 pound-feet of torque. The Cuda typically came with either Chrysler's bulletproof 727 torque flight or the A833 4-speed. Both excellent, but the Pontiac's gear ratios were specifically optimized for the Super Duty's power curve. Street racers who witnessed these battles tell consistent stories. From a dead stop, the Super Duty's superior weight transfer and modern tire technology often gave it the edge. The Trans Am's refined suspension geometry, developed after years of Trans Am racing experience, planted the power better than the Cuda's more primitive setup. But once rolling, the 446 pack's mid-range torque was devastating. Those 3 carburetors, opening simultaneously at 3,500 RPM, created a surge of acceleration that felt like getting rear-ended by a freight train. Track testing from Period magazines confirms what street racers discovered. Hot Rod magazine ran both cars at Orange County International Raceway in similar conditions. Their SD 455 Trans Am ran 13.51 at 104.2 miles per hour. Their 446 pack Cuda managed 13.73 at 103.8, close enough that driver skill, weather, and track conditions could flip the results on any given day. The real tragedy is how short-lived this battle was. By 1974, the 446 pack was already dead, killed by emissions regulations and insurance costs. The Super Duty survived one more year before Pontiac pulled the plug. In just 24 months, both of these magnificent engines vanished forever, taking with them the last remnants of the original muscle car era. What followed was the darkness enthusiasts call the Malaise era. The 1975 Trans Am's biggest engine made 200 net horsepower. The Cuda didn't even survive to see 1975, discontinued entirely after 1974. Performance cars became front-wheel drive economy boxes with stripes. The roar of triple carburetors and forged pistons was replaced by the wheeze of smog pumps and catalytic converters. But these 2 cars left a legacy that changed everything. The Super Duty 455 proved that engineers could still build performance even under crushing regulations. They just had to be clever about it. This lesson would eventually lead to the turbocharged Grand Nationals and fuel-injected Corvettes of the 1980s. The 446 pack showed that there was a market for engines that could perform and still be driven daily. paving the way for modern muscle cars that make 700 horsepower while getting decent fuel economy. Today, finding either of these cars is like discovering buried treasure. Super Duty Trans Ams regularly sell for six figures at auction. A numbers-matching 446 Pack Cuda can command even more, but the owners who have them rarely sell. They know they're custodians of the last battle of the original muscle car war. The answer to which was faster depends on who you ask and where they raced. Magazine tests gave the edge to the Pontiac by a whisker. Street racers say it came down to the driver and the exact setup. But everyone agrees on one thing. When these two met at a stoplight in 1973 or 1974, they were watching history. Two engineers' middle fingers to the establishment. Two final statements about what American performance meant before the government and insurance companies killed it all. Neither car won the war because they both lost to regulations and reality. But for a brief moment, on empty highways and abandoned strips of asphalt across America, the Super Duty 455 and the 446 Pack kept the flame alive. They were the last gladiators in an arena that was already being torn down around them, and everyone who witnessed their battles knew they were seeing something that would never come again.